Just a quick word before your podcast starts to let you know that Behind the Goals with me, Rachel Corsey and Leanne Crichton is now available every Tuesday. Make sure you tune in each week for all things women's football and plenty of special guests. Just search Behind the Goals on BBC Sounds.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast, the latest in our series of Premiership previews. The BBC commentator Liam McLeod is here to share his insight with me, David Currie, and for a fan-flavoured perspective, Motherwell fan Jenna Thomson joins us, and that is because we are contemplating what's in store for the Steel men and Steel women in the season ahead. Jenna, a very warm welcome to the podcast. You'll have been through the ringer emotionally last season, I would warrant, and you're here to tell a tale. Did you think it was curtains when you were in the lower depths of the Premiership?
Honestly, I try not to think about it too much, or else I would end up getting sad again. But it was quite a scary time, I'm not going to lie. Just after Christmas, I did actually think we were going to drop down, and it was horrible to think about. I mean, Motherwell was one of the longest lasting top flight teams. I don't think we've been relegated since around about the 80s maybe, and the thought of seeing that heritage just be wiped out in a single season, it's quite frightening. But I'm hoping it's a new season now, it's a new start. We've got Kettlewell at the wheel.
It was a heroic turnaround from Motherwell last term, Liam, under Stuart Kettlewell. But, you know, it's tough when it doesn't work out for a club stalwart, as was the case with Stevie Hamill.
Yeah, I'd love to know what Stuart's putting in the tea at Motherwell. What a job he did, honestly. And Jenna's talking about the last time they weren't in the top flight. It was the 84-85 season. So since 1985, they've been at the top table in Scottish football. And, you know, you're just used to Motherwell being there. They've been there certainly most of my lifetime. And they were in a real pickle last season. There's no question about that. I think they were doomed unless something happened, and what happened was Stuart Kettlewell. And yes, they made improvements in the January window. Yes, Kevin Van Veen scored goal after goal after goal, but there were other facets of the recovery, and Stuart Kettlewell was behind them. And you know, already this season he's having a good League Cup campaign. I think it's just a couple of defeats in 17 matches for him now. They won 9 games after he took over last season. They'd only won 7 for the entire season before his appointment. So he's got the Midas touch, and you'll just hope he's got the Midas touch again this season. He's got a heck of a hole to fill up front with Van Veen going back to his homeland. He'll hope that Connor Wilkinson and John Obika can provide those goals. But if one thing Motherwell have been pretty good at over the last 10 to 15 years is having a good number 9. The likes of Sutton, Higdon, Malt, and then Van Veen. Can they replace his goals? And that's going to be a big issue. But, you know, it's certainly brighter times, it appears, for Motherwell than it was, say, 6 months ago.
Yeah, Van Veen's departure, he's Van Veen and gone, Jenna. Not unexpected, but it must still hurt a wee bit.
I was going to say, too soon, guy. You're going to have me sat here bubbling in a minute now. I mean, we all saw it coming. We knew something drastic must have happened for us to be able to keep him for this season. I'm quite disappointed with the figure that is quoted that we apparently got for him. I was hoping we'd get something a little bit more to try bring in, hopefully, a striker of equal talent that he had. We were saying earlier, Kettlewell had the Midas touch. I think Van Veen had a probably even one-handed version of that when it came to scoring last season. And seeing him go, it was painful. But Obika does have huge boots to fill. He's taken over the number 9 jersey. So far, there's been some promise there. It's still quite early in the season, so I don't want to judge too harshly or too well in any of the players now. But I'm feeling hopeful, but I think we could definitely use a couple extra options up front, at least 2 more, I think, just to really pad things out and try figure out the best option for ourselves.
Yeah, John Obika, Liam's a folk hero in Paisley, but he's not he doesn't appear to be a 20 goals plus a season striker.
No, he's the reason Hearts were relegated that term. At least he's one of the reasons. He was the final reason because they'd been awful that season, but he scored that goal for St Mirren just before the lockdown. And ultimately it led to Hearts being controversially relegated. He went down south. He worked with Stephen Robinson down at Morecambe and came back to Scotland. And I thought he did a pretty decent job. Actually, the start of his Motherwell career was excellent. But yeah, is he a 20-goal a season striker? I mean, Van Veen was almost a 30-goal season striker last term. But look, Obika's a player who can cause problems. He can drag defenders around, and he knows where to be in the box if he gets the service. And at the end of the day, Motherwell have got some exciting players behind him. I think Blair Spittle's always been a pretty good player at this level, and he'll continue to be. Callum Slattery was excellent against Queen's Park on Saturday. I thought he was good last season. He could be doing with being booked a bit less, but that would perhaps be taking an edge off his game. And I think everyone at Motherwell's got the right to be excited by Lennon Miller. I think he has got a really good future when you see him, and he's getting his chance. He's only 16. I think is he Motherwell's youngest goal scorer after he scored in the match against, was it Elgin on their opening League Cup match. So, if he has a good career, he'll be following in the footsteps of his old man who did okay. But he's a different kind of player to Lee. But I'm sure Jenna's as excited with him as she is about Stuart Kettlewell being at the wheel, as she says.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best things that we could do as a club right now is try to get Lennon Miller on some sort of long-term deal. If we can get him tied down to us for at least another 2 years, if not 3 or 4, we'll be laughing ourselves all the way to the top of the Premiership. The talent that he has, honestly, so far is amazing. It must be hard as a young player, especially since he's only 16. He'll be fresh out of school. He might not know fully where he wants to go play in the future. That's more than fine. He's got plenty of time to figure it out. But if we can keep him here, get him as much experience as he can, I mean, being that age and breaking into the first team, and not only that, but performing well in the first team as well. When you're playing against players about 6 years your senior at the minimum, he is punching well above his weight, and it's such a beautiful thing to watch. It really does revitalise us as fans because it gives us something to root for as well. He's a homegrown talent for us. He's like another David Turnbull, Alan Campbell. They saw the benefit of sticking with ourselves, going through the youth system, fighting their way into the first team, and look how those two are doing now. Alan Campbell's flying high at Luton. Fair enough, Turnbull's kind of fell off a little bit with Celtic, but overall, I mean, getting moves like that in the first place, those don't come easy. And he'll be thinking that himself. What can I get out of Motherwell, and what can I do for Motherwell as well?
Well, high hopes then for Lennon Miller, Liam, from Jenna. No pressure on him then, eh?
Well, I know that's the thing. You've got to be careful when it comes to the younger players that you don't expect too much of them too soon. I mean, he seems to be the kind of guy who's quite happy, despite his age, to get onto the pitch along with all these other senior players and get stuck in. And the fact that he's been in and about the first team for these League Cup matches suggests that he's someone who is going to get a good amount of football this season. I think it's exciting for the Motherwell supporters to have him in their ranks, and if he can kick on. And Jenna mentioned some of the other youngsters who broke through at Motherwell and have gone on for big money moves. This guy looks like he could be the next one, but I think he's only 16. He needs a good couple of seasons in the first team at Motherwell. I don't think that would do him any damage at all. Even one really good season where he's playing 35, 40 games might actually be enough for him. I mean, Calvin Ramsey did that at Aberdeen. He was a little bit older, tiny bit older. Andy Robertson, when he stepped up from the amateur level at Queen's Park to Dundee United, he just needed the one season at Dundee United before he went down south to Hull, and then to where he's ended up now, one of the world's best players, certainly one of the world's best left backs. So, Lennon Miller's got the world at his feet. And to be fair, if you're looking at clubs in Scottish football who are a good breeding ground for this kind of thing and who would look after you and make sure you make the right decisions and take the right steps, it's Motherwell Football Club.
Jenna mentioned, I know it was you, Liam, mentioned Blair Spittle chipping in with goals from midfield. And Stuart Kettlewell, I think I was reading comments he made there talking about dealing with the departure of Van Veen, and he says, look, I'm expecting people to chip in with goals from midfield, and I'm looking to get some joy from set pieces. Do you think, Jenny, he'll maybe have to change the way they play a wee bit to deal with the big man's absence?
I think we absolutely do have to. I mean, something I have noticed about Kettlewell is that he seemed quite hesitant to play with wingers. I've realised he has been trying to utilise Stephen O'Donnell, which is almost a natural wing back as such. But if we can focus on the midfield and maybe get some wingers into the fold as well, it then means that all hope isn't just relying on John Abika or whoever ends up being our first choice striker for the rest of the season. Yeah, it's good that Van Veen was able to push ahead and we could rely on him no matter what. But let's be honest, we've all watched football long enough to know that that isn't sustainable. You can't always go with that method. You need to rely on the players round about you. It's a team sport for a reason. And if the likes of Callum Slattery, Blair Spittle can increase their goal tally, then I don't see any reason why overall this season we might score the 20 goals. Might not be Abika doing it himself.
We've all got it. Yeah, we've all got it, David. That's the thing. If you're a fan of a team, the league table right now, all slates have been wiped clean, and Motherwell are the same. In fact, to be fair, the season probably, out of all the teams in the Premiership, the season probably ended too soon for Motherwell and Stuart Kettlewell, because they were going like a train. It just came a little bit too late for top six. But I think, Stuart Kettlewell was being mentioned for or nominated for Manager of the Season awards. I mean, that just shows you how good a job he did. And we're not just saying that for the sake of it, and we're not just blowing smoke at him, if you like, because he was part of our team of sport. You are, I. But he was on Sports Sound for a while, and he was doing a really good job in Sports Sound there as well. So Motherwell took him away from us. In fact, he was named Motherwell interim manager on the Saturday night, I think, after Stevie Hamill had lost his job when they lost in the Cup at Raith Rovers. And he was named interim manager. On the next day, he was due to go to Dens Park to watch Dundee play Cove Rangers for Sports Sound. And I know that because I was presenting the programme on the Sunday. And despite the appointment, he went up to Dens and did it. Although he did admit his mind wasn't so much on the game he was watching, because he was going to be the Motherwell manager. And bizarrely that day, Chris Doolan was our co-commentator, or one of our co-commentators. And 3 hours after I said goodbye to him at Ibrox that day, he was the new Partick Thistle manager. Didn't have a clue it was happening. He was watching Thistle lose in the Cup at Ibrox with Ian McCall in the dugout. It was a bonkers season across the board. And had Motherwell made it to the top six, it would have been even more so.
Yeah, what was your reaction when Stuart Kettlewell got the gig initially on that interim basis, Jenna?
It was a mixture of happiness and a bit of sadness as well with Stephen Hamill's departure. I don't think there was a single Motherwell fan that didn't feel sad for the guy. I mean, everyone wanted it to work out for him. And then found that he couldn't even return as the youth coach. It was almost as if we were rubbing salt in the wind for the poor guy. It's a lot of fans. We were really just sad to see him go, and that's the only way to describe it bluntly. It felt like grieving a loss of someone, because he'd been around for that long. I mean, he was one of the few people that earned the nickname of Mr. Motherwell. You thought of Motherwell, you thought of Stephen.
It was Hamill and Lasley, wasn't it? Those two. They had brief spells away from Motherwell, but came back, and both of them racked up hundreds and hundreds of appearances between them. And it's always sad, but it's always the danger. If you're a club legend, Stevie Hamill could have sat there potentially and been in charge of the youth team and had a job for life. But he took the punt. He went for it. And unfortunately for him, it didn't work out. Well,
it's the old saying, isn't it? Opportunity seldom knocks more than once in football, and you've got to take the chance, Jenna.
That's it, exactly. And to be fair, it's balanced itself out for him. I'm pretty sure he's doing something with one of the youth teams at Celtic now, so it's not as if he's lost his touch with the youth academy. You could tell he was really passionate about it. When he took over at first, we saw a lot of young players getting debuts for us, including Lennon Miller himself as well. It was him that pushed him through into the first team for us last season as well. So there's definitely been a little bit of an impact still in the team from when Hamill was there, which I'm grateful for, if I'm being honest. At first, when Kettlewell was announced, I was a little bit sceptical, because my main line of thinking was great, we've just replaced the youth coach with a new youth coach. How's this going to go? But I can honestly say I'm glad that my scepticism was proven wrong, and long may the Kettlewell reign continue.
It looks like promoting from within. That's what Liverpool used to do, Liam. Always seemed to work for them back in the day.
Yeah, and look, they're giving it the go. They've as Jenna says, it's 2 appointments on the bounce that they've gone that route. And it works actually in many different ways. If the appointment is a success, then great, because you're promoting from within, and in any other business, that's what happens. So that's all very well and good, but it's giving someone an opportunity within the club. It's a kind of cost savvy way of doing it. Some people would say it's the cheapo option, but look, if he comes in and does what, or anyone comes in and does what Stuart's done, then you can't argue with it. I mean, these guys have got something about them. We've seen Aberdeen go down that road with Barry Robson. That was just as successful, because their season looked dead and buried as well when he took over from Jim Goodwin. Yet they've gone from strength to strength so far. They finished third. They're into Europe. The interim appointment of Stuart Kettlewell and Chris Doolan, who I mentioned earlier, was a success as well, albeit Partick Thistle fell just short in the playoff final. But good luck to him and good luck to Motherwell. They're a well-run club. The fans there are passionate about them, and I've always had, being an Aberdonian and looking at clubs from the southwest of Scotland, you always have respect for the supporters who, a lot of them have to watch supporters buses head for Glasgow on a weekly basis to support one of the big two there. It's so close. The temptation must be there. But the Motherwell fans, they're so invested in their club. They love going to Fir Park, and when that club is on the up, it's an exciting place to be.
Right, Jenna, at the top of the podcast, you were full of hope, full of expectation. I'm just going to put you right on the spot now and ask you where you think your beloved team will be come the end of the season.
We're winning the full thing. Joking. The optimist in me wants to say at minimum top 6. I might even go as far as say put my name down for us finishing at least 4th or 5th. However, I am cautious that we will most likely make a mull of it and fall short at the end and might just miss out again and might end up in 7th or even 8th. But I'm going to be optimistic, and if this comes and bites me at the end of the season, gets screen recorded by everyone that I know, then I'll just have to smile and bear it. I'm saying 5th. I'm going to go with it.
5th, but kind of anywhere between 4th and 8th, Liam.
Yes, it would be. I don't think there's anything. Yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with that prediction, because there's certainly, as we've discussed in other podcasts, going to be a space in the top 6 for, you would think, one out with Celtic, Rangers, Aberdeen, Hearts, and Hibs.
There's a common theme here, isn't there, Liam?
No, there is, but it's all about whether they're going to have enough to get into that position. But look, Motherwell have surpassed expectations in the past, and not in the too distant past either. Some excellent finishes under Mark McGee and then Stuart McCall. I would fully expect them to be up there challenging for the top 6 this season, and I don't think anyone's going to particularly enjoy a trip to Fir Park. I think Motherwell are going to be a very difficult team to beat at home. I think they need to improve the home form. They, like St Johnstone, were much better on the road last season, which belied the rest of the league. Motherwell had the 3rd best record in the Premiership away from home last season. If they can tighten up that home form, and they did towards the end of the season under Kettlewell, then they won't be too far off finishing in the top half of the table.
Well, folks, thanks to you, Jenna Thomson, Motherwell fan extraordinaire, and BBC commentator Liam McLeod. You have been listening to a Scottish football podcast, a Premiership preview. There will be more of the same or broadly similar next week.